Today's lesson is the once-in-a-generation talent of Timothée Chalamet. Hi, everybody. I'm Roger.
Hello, I'm Kiki.
And today we're going to continue talking about Timothée Chalamet. He's a new face from Hollywood. He acts in lots of movies. We did talk about his beginnings, and he was quite dedicated to his role there. He learned Italian. He learned how to play the piano and the guitar. And he was nominated for an Academy Award for Best Actor. And, well, what did he do when he worked with Greta Gerwig, Kiki?
Well, they made a movie called Lady Bird where he worked with another wonderful actor, Saoirse Ronan. And they were so good in this movie, along with their director, Greta Gerwig. They developed a very close friendship that they decided to make another movie together, which was 2019's version of Little Women. And at this point in his life, he has had many critically acclaimed films under his belt that he was able to get the attention of a lot of these Hollywood directors and producers. So he was able to land a major role in 2021's version of Dune.
Right, and maybe you saw that film, and of course he did quite well in that film, and of course he's probably going to do many more things in the future. So let's begin today's lesson by talking about some other aspects of Timothée Chalamet. He's not just an actor, but he also has some other unique traits or characteristics that we should point out. So let's get to it. Let's listen to the first part of our lesson right now.
Chalamet is widely considered one of the most promising actors of his generation. On top of that, he's gained a reputation as a fashion icon, with GQ magazine calling him the best-dressed man in the world in 2020. This is all the more intriguing because Chalamet doesn't follow traditional male ideals, but rather blurs the line between masculine and feminine in both appearance and behavior.
大家好，第一部分我们来介绍形容词 promising， 它的意思是大有希望的或是很有前途的。例如 Sasha thought her interview went well, so it looked promising that she would get the job. Sasha 觉得自己的面试进行得很顺利，所以她很有希望获得这份工作。又或者说 The child actress gave up a promising career in movies in order to go to school and become a doctor. 那名女童星为了上学并成为医生而放弃了在电影界的大好前途。接着是名词 reputation， 这个单字的意思是名声或是声誉。举例来说 Jeremy's rude and selfish behavior has given him a bad reputation among his classmates. Jeremy 的无理和自私使他在同学眼中名声不佳。又或者说 Reports that employees were treated poorly have ruined the company's reputation. 员工受到不当对待的报道已损害了公司的声誉。再来我们看到动词 blur， 它的意思是使模糊不清或是使朦胧。例如 Critics say this news report blurs the line between truth and fiction. 批评者指出这篇新闻模糊了事实与虚构的界限。或者 You can use this editing software to blur the edges of the image. 你可以使用这个编辑软体来模糊图片边缘。
Chalamet is widely considered one of the most promising actors of his generation. So in the title of our article, we talk about being once in a generation. So this is something that might happen only one time in one generation, which is implying that Timothée Chalamet is a really wonderful actor. And here in our first sentence, we talk about him being one of the most promising actors of his generation. So along with his peers or other actors in his age or in his generation, he's one of the most promising because, like we heard in day one, he's done a lot in the short amount of time that he's been in Hollywood. Now, promising means that this is somebody or something that we're going to look out for because we're going to see very good, impressive results from somebody or from something. So sometimes you can use promising in other ways, like that solution seems promising, we should follow along with that plan, or that plan seems promising, we should do it. Okay, so when something is promising, it's something very positive and it's something to look forward to.
Right, it shows a sign of future success. You could say, for example, oh, your son shows a lot of promise with the piano. You should send him to the Suzuki school or to Juilliard or whatever. And so he's got this promising talent. He's one of the most promising actors of his generation. And on top of that, he's gained a reputation as a fashion icon, with GQ magazine calling him the best-dressed man in the world in 2020. So he's a fashion icon here. In addition to being a great actor, he's also kind of a status symbol, or he's a fashion icon. An icon is like a symbol of something. If you think about high fashion, you often think of certain people wearing certain clothes. And so in this particular case, though, I guess he looks really good when he dresses up. He's a fashion icon. He's an idol for a lot of people. GQ magazine, of course, is a magazine that stresses male style and how you can dress well if you're a man, what kinds of clothes you can buy, what suits you can buy from Italian tailors or whatever. And he was called the best-dressed man in 2020, which I believe is quite an honor. I would never achieve such an honor like that.
So he gained a reputation. A reputation is basically when somebody is known for something. So the beliefs or opinions that are generally held about someone or something, that is somebody's reputation. So, for example, Roger has a good reputation because his voice is just lovely and everybody loves to listen to his programs.
Well, I must be modest. I think I'm just a voice among many. I've been working in this industry for a long time. But indeed, you can have a good reputation or a bad reputation. And in this particular case, he's got a good reputation as being a fashion icon. And again, he was called the best-dressed man in the year 2020 by GQ magazine. And this is all the more intriguing because Chalamet doesn't follow traditional male ideals, but rather blurs the line between masculine and feminine in both appearance and behavior. And when I see a description like that, I immediately think of Japanese manga where the male characters are kind of like, well, they look like they're guys, but they also look like they're girls as well. It kind of blurs the line between what is a boy and what is a girl, or what is masculine and what is feminine. So let's go back to the beginning of this sentence. We've got this phrase, all the more. You could say this is even more intriguing, even more than what we just mentioned. Something else is true. If something's intriguing, it means we want to learn more about that thing. That's very fascinating. That's interesting. Tell me more. That's quite intriguing. It's very interesting.
Right. It gets people very curious about something. And this is because Timothée Chalamet, he doesn't follow traditional male ideals, but rather blurs the line between masculine and feminine in both appearance and behavior. If you see the photos of Timothée Chalamet, you can see that he looks very young for his age, and he's very pale, and his facial structure, even though it's very chiseled, he has a very strong chin, but it's not the traditional wide-jawed masculine look. So it's a little bit softer, more feminine, but at the same time, you can still feel that he has very masculine qualities about him. So that's why he blurs the line between masculine and feminine. So what does it mean when something is blurred or when something is blurry? Basically, it's kind of foggy. You're not sure about what side it is. It's unclear or not very distinct. So, for example, you can say, oh, I couldn't remember anything that happened last night. It was all a blur because I was just so tired from a long day of work.
Right, so it's just not very clear. You might have blurry vision, for example, so you need to go see the eye doctor and maybe get a pair of glasses. And yeah, it blurs the line between masculine and feminine. Of course, something's masculine when it's man-like, okay? It would be like Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson or Arnold Schwarzenegger. Those guys are very masculine. And if we're talking about someone being feminine, well, we're talking about a beautiful lady, for example, like Lin Zhiling here in Taiwan. Very ladylike indeed. But again, Timothée Chalamet kind of blurs the line between what is masculine and what is feminine. Okay, that brings us to the end of the first part of our lesson for today. Let's listen to the next part.
Interviewers describe Chalamet as sensitive and emotional. Asked in 2021 by Time what he stands for, the actor replied, "I feel like I'm here to show that to wear your heart on your sleeve is okay." And indeed, he's not afraid to be vulnerable. Dune director Denis Villeneuve recounted how Timmy, as his friends call him, frequently confided his fears and concerns to him while working on the film.
第二部分先看到形容词 vulnerable， 它的意思是脆弱的、易受伤的或是易受影响的。例如 The newborn puppies are vulnerable to illness, so the owners need to be careful while caring for them. 刚出生的小狗很容易生病，所以饲主在照顾它们时要格外小心。或是 The town is vulnerable to flooding as it is near the river. 那座城镇临近河川，所以易患洪灾。再来介绍动词 recount， 指的是讲述或是描述。例如 Daniel recounted the dream that he had last night to his mother. Daniel 向妈妈讲述了他昨晚做的梦。或是 With tears in her eyes, Jenny recounted how she was attacked by a stranger. Jenny 含着眼泪讲述她被陌生人攻击的过程。下一个是 confide， 这个动词有吐露或是倾诉秘密的意思。我们可以说 After her best friend moved abroad, Saffron felt she had no one to confide in. 在她最好的朋友移居国外后， Saffron 觉得自己没有可以倾诉的对象。也可以说 When I have something on my mind, I always confide it with my mother. 当我有心事时，我总是会向我妈妈倾诉。
Let's talk about part 2. Interviewers describe Chalamet as sensitive and emotional. So this kind of brings us back to the last part of our last paragraph, which was blurring the line between masculine and feminine. Chalamet is sensitive and emotional. So traditionally, people would think, oh, if you're manly, you shouldn't show your feelings, you shouldn't show your emotion. But people that have interviewed Chalamet, they talk about him as somebody that is sensitive. So somebody that is very in touch with their feelings and in touch with their emotion. And he's more willing to possibly share more of his thoughts and inner ideas during his interviews.
Right, so he's sensitive, he's emotional, he's not macho. And asked in 2021 by Time magazine what he stands for, the actor replied, I feel like I'm here to show that to wear your heart on your sleeve is okay. So this is Time magazine, and they interviewed him a couple of years ago, and they asked him what he stands for. Yeah, what's your position on certain things, or what kind of person are you? How would you describe yourself? And he said, well, my role here, I feel like I'm here to show that it's okay to wear your heart on your sleeve. If you do that, that means you're not afraid to show your emotions. You don't hide behind a mask of masculinity. You don't be macho. You're just honest with your feelings and you let people know about them.
And indeed, he's not afraid to be vulnerable. So when you're vulnerable, it means you put your guard down, you don't put up a wall, and you are not afraid to be poked at. So when something is vulnerable, if we talk about the olden days, when a castle is vulnerable, it doesn't have its defenses up or it doesn't have the protective walls up. That is what makes your castle vulnerable. It makes it weak. The outsiders can penetrate your castle. So in this case, when a person is vulnerable, they put down their walls and they allow other people to try to get to know them more, and they're more willing to share more of their thoughts and emotions.
Right, to be vulnerable just means to be easily attacked, and he's not afraid to be vulnerable. Dune director Denis Villeneuve recounted how Timmy, as his friends called him, frequently confided his fears and concerns to him while working on the film. So this is the director of Dune, a French guy, and he recounted or told us about something that happened in the past. Timmy, as his friends call him, he confided his fears to the director. If you confide with somebody or to confide somebody, that just means you are speaking in private to them and you're honest with them. You share some feelings you have with that person that you wouldn't really share with other people.
Right. So he was always willing to talk to the director Villeneuve, about what he's worried about, how they can make the film better, or what he thinks might not work, things like that. He was being honest to the director. And because I think it also shows his work ethic, wanting to make a good film. So that's why he communicated a lot with the director. Okay, that comes to the end of part 2. Let's listen to part 3.
After the success of Dune, more big things are in store for the actor. In December 2023, fans were treated to the whimsical musical fantasy Wonka, which tells the origin of Willy Wonka from Roald Dahl's 1964 novel Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. And of course, Dune Part 2. And its all-star cast hit theaters in February. So, it's safe to say that Timmy has joined the big leagues.
第3部分看到 in store 这个片语指的是准备着或是即将发生。举例来说 We can only guess what the future has in store for each of us. 我们每个人都只能猜测未来会面临什么事。最后一个例子Frank is looking forward to the new school year, for there is a lot of learning in store for him. Frank 很期待新学年，因为有许多东西等着他去学习。
Okay, let's talk about part 3 now. Here it says, after the success of Dune, more big things are in store for the actor. If something's in store, that just means it's going to happen soon. In December 2023, just a couple of months ago, fans were treated to the whimsical musical fantasy Wonka, which tells the origin of Willy Wonka from Roald Dahl's 1964 novel Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. So this is a long sentence. Let's break it down here. Back in 2023, fans were treated to this whimsical musical fantasy entitled Wonka. If something's whimsical, it's kind of playful, kind of silly, not really serious. And it's a musical fantasy. And a fantasy is kind of a movie that's very imaginative, and it's got all sorts of wild creatures that don't really exist in reality, like fairies and angels and things like that. So it's a musical fantasy. And, well, this particular movie tells the origin or the beginning of Willy Wonka. Maybe you know that character, and that's from a novel written by Roald Dahl in 1964. And the novel was entitled, or is entitled, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory.
Right. And over the years, we've seen lots of different interpretations of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. We've seen Johnny Depp's version, and even earlier on in 1971, Gene Wilder's version. There are so many ways to tell the story of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. I myself actually did a play about Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. So it's really a classic story, and everybody just loves Willy Wonka. So to see this new adaptation, a 2023 musical adaptation of Wonka, and especially telling the origin story. That's something different that we never really saw before. This is the beginnings of Willy Wonka, how he became the man behind the chocolate. Okay, so this is a very interesting new telling of this classic story.
Okay, and he continues to roll on. And of course, we're talking about Dune Part 2. And its all-star cast hit theaters last February, which was just a couple of months ago. Maybe you went to the theater to see it. And it has an all-star cast. You've got all sorts of famous people acting in this movie. If something hits theaters or hits the street or whatever, it starts being shown there or it starts to exist there. So it was premiered in theaters back in February. So it's safe to say that Timmy has joined the big leagues, which means he's now very, very famous. Here, the big leagues refers to American baseball, where we have the American League and the National League. So if you hit the big leagues, you not only become a famous baseball player, but you become famous in other fields as well. Okay, we're at the end of our explanation for today. Let's turn things now over to Hanny.
各位同学大家好，我是 Hanny。 我们来看今天的文法重点。课文第一部分有一句提到，夏乐梅并不追随传统的男性准则，在外表和行为上都模糊了男子气概和女性化之间的界限。那文中是用 Charlemagne doesn't but rather 来表达说夏乐梅并不是怎么样，而是怎么样怎么样的语义。好，那么 rather 当副词可以用来更正前面的陈述，表示更确切的说，或者是而是怎么样，相反的怎么样怎么样，常常会接在否定陈述之后。那当我们用 not but rather 就可以表达不是什么什么，而是什么什么。举例来说 She doesn't consider Richard to be a friend, but rather an acquaintance. 她没有把 Richard 视为朋友，而是视为点头之交。好，那接着读到课文第三部分，他提到沙丘第二部与星光熠熠的卡斯于2月登上大荧幕，文中是用 hit theaters 来表达登上大荧幕、上映啊、上院线的那种意思。这边要补充一下，在口语当中呢，我们常常会用 hit 加上地方来表达去某个地方。hit 在这边是指说到达或者是出现在哪里哪里，像 hit the gym 是上健身房， hit the road 可以表达上路出发， hit the shelves 出现在架上，那就表示上架，所以像这样的片语就可以表达说产品上架、新品上市等等的语义。好，我们看到课文最后一句，他有说到So it's safe to say that Timmy has joined the big leagues. 因此可以说夏乐梅已经是大牌明星的一员了。那这边有2个重点，第一个重点是句型 It's safe to say that 主词加动词，可以表达可以肯定的说怎么样怎么样，有把握说怎么样怎么样。那这个句型常常用来表达对将要说的话很有信心，有十足的把握。那么 that 子句当中的 that 可以省略。举例来说I think it's safe to say that the concert will be nothing short of amazing. 我想那场演唱会一定会很精彩。那第二个重点是 The Big Leagues 原本是指美国的2大棒球联盟，美国联盟和国家联盟，那可以用来比喻一流的地位、最高殿堂、最顶尖的行列或是重要领域。好，举例来说 The actress finally made it to the big leagues after she won an Oscar. 那位女演员拿下奥斯卡奖后，终于成为大牌明星的一员了。好，那么以上就是今天重点整理，我们回顾今天单字吧。
Promising. The team has had a promising start to the season, easily winning their first 3 games. Reputation. Mr. Moody has a bad reputation in the neighborhood because he has been rude to many people. Icon. With one hit movie after another, the director has become an icon of the film industry. Blur. His constant unclear statements blurred the situation and confused many people who were listening. Masculine. In spite of his many masculine qualities, Toby also has a sensitive side. Vulnerable. Children and animals are often seen as vulnerable and deserving of special care and protection. Fantasy. My friend Rex is a big fan of fantasy novels.
Discussion Starter starts now!
Here's our discussion starter for today. The question is, what characteristic do you think is most responsible for Timothy Chalamet's success and why?
I think Chalamet's dedication to his art and performance, taking initiative to learn other skills, to add on to his acting and building up his characters for each film. I think that is the key reason for his success.
Well, I've seen him on film, and let's face it, even though he's really, really talented and he's dedicated to his craft, I think the main reason he is successful is because of his cute, curly black hair.
Well, everyone, today's article has come to an end, and I sure hope you enjoy reading along with us. I am Kiki.
I am Roger.
See you next time.